Hey everyone, and welcome back. We're diving deep today
Yeah.
into interracial love.
Okay.
And we've got this really cool article called What Nobody Tells You About Interracial Love. And
Yeah.
honestly, it is packed with these like light bulb moments, you know?
Mm.
Like those moments where you're like, I never thought of it that way.
Right,
You
right.
ready to unpack this?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think this article, it just gives a really nuanced look at, all the dynamics in interracial relationships
Okay, cool.
and goes, deeper than those like surface level discussions that we tend to hear a lot.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm excited.
Okay, let's jump right in. So, the article starts by defining interracial love, and it really emphasizes how this concept has evolved over time.
Right.
It's not just the static thing, it changes along with how society changes.
Yeah.
And like attitudes towards race and relationships.
Yeah, that's a really great point. We often think about things like love and relationships as like universal constants. But in reality, they're really connected to the social and historical context.
That's so true.
And if you think about it, even something as basic as marriage has changed like drastically over time.
Oh, yeah.
And, interracial love kind of reflects that evolution.
Yeah, it's like we're always like redefining, what these things look like.
Right.
What love and relationships and all of that.
Absolutely.
And speaking of redefining things, the article then digs into some of these common stereotypes
Yes.
about interracial relationships. And honestly, some of them really made me stop and think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It does a great job of like unpacking those misconceptions.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important to address those, head on, like right away.
Yeah.
So, for example, one of the stereotypes it tackles is that idea that partners from different backgrounds
Oh, yeah.
can't truly understand each other's experiences.
Oh, I've heard that one.
Right.
Right.
So many times.
It's like this assumption that there's this like huge gap between cultures.
Yeah. And that it's like impossible to have those shared experiences.
Yeah. And the article pushes back on that pretty hard, doesn't it?
It does. It says that, that assumption that there's like a disconnect.
Yeah.
Ignores the power of like shared values and communication.
Yeah.
A lot of interracial couples find that their differences actually make the relationship stronger. And like they learn and grow from each other and their perspectives change.
So it's not just about overcoming differences, it's about turning them into strengths, right?
Exactly.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Another stereotype the article debunks is that interracial couples face constant pressure and conflict from society.
Yeah.
What do you think about that? Like, how true is that really?
Well, it's true that some couples do face like prejudice or judgment.
Right.
But I think it's super important to remember that those experiences aren't universal. Lots of interracial couples actually find a lot of support and acceptance in their communities. If you focus only on the negative, it creates like a distorted picture.
Right.
Yeah. And kind of overshadows the positive stories.
So we can't overgeneralize.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
So the article goes on to talk about the topic of cultural differences and adaptation.
Yes.
And uses this really interesting example of a couple that has to deal with different religious holidays, Diwali and Christmas.
Right.
What did you think about that example?
I think it shows perfectly how navigating cultural differences in a relationship requires communication, compromise,
Yeah.
and like a willingness to try new things.
Yeah.
Instead of seeing their different traditions as obstacles.
Right.
This couple finds a way to blend them and create something new and unique to them that honors both of their heritages.
So it's not about erasing your cultures. It's about kind of weaving them together to
Right.
make something even richer.
Exactly.
I love that.
Yeah.
Earlier you mentioned the importance of communication, and that seems to be like a big theme in the article. Why do you think communication is so crucial, especially in interracial relationships?
Communication is like the bedrock of any relationship.
Yeah.
But especially in interracial relationships, it takes on a new level of importance.
Okay. Yeah.
You're not just dealing with the usual ups and downs.
Right.
You've also got those added complexities of different cultural backgrounds. And that can sometimes lead to misunderstandings or conflicts or hurt feelings if you don't talk about them openly and honestly.
Yeah, for sure. It's like you need that extra layer of, awareness and sensitivity.
Right.
Because there might be nuances or things that could set someone off that you wouldn't think about if you had the same background.
Right.
And the article goes even deeper than that.
It does.
Right.
It goes beyond just saying communicate,
Right.
It talks about specific techniques.
What kind of techniques?
Well, for example, it highlights active listening
So,
you know, going beyond just hearing the words, but really trying to see your partner's perspective.
oh, okay.
Really understanding them and making them feel safe to share their experiences.
Yeah. It's not just about talking. It's about making sure you're both heard
Exactly.
and understood,
Yeah.
which can be really challenging, especially when you're dealing with sensitive stuff like, race and culture and identity.
Right.
And the article mentions nonverbal cues, too.
It does, yeah. Nonverbal communication can actually be even more powerful than words.
Oh, wow.
Things like your tone of voice, facial expressions, body language can say a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're from different backgrounds, it's important to be mindful of how those cues can be interpreted differently.
It's almost like you have to learn a whole new language together.
Right. Right.
One that combines your understanding of those nonverbal cues.
Absolutely.
So it's about being intentional, paying attention to those subtle things and making sure you're sending the right message.
Exactly.
Okay. So building on that foundation of communication, the article then goes into building a shared identity, which I think is like one of the most beautiful things about interracial relationships.
It is.
What does building a shared identity really look like?
Okay, so it's about finding that balance between honoring your individual cultural identities and creating something new as a couple. It's like writing a story together.
Okay.
You've got your own chapters, but you're also on this journey together.
Yeah. So it's not about giving up who you are or assimilating into some dominant culture.
No, not at all.
It's about making a space where both cultures can live and even grow together.
Yeah, it's like creating this beautiful tapestry.
Yeah.
Each thread is different, but they all come together to make something amazing.
I love that analogy. And the article talks about how important shared experiences are for that process.
It does, things like going to cultural events together, celebrating each other's traditions, maybe even starting your own traditions as a couple that blend both of your heritages.
Yeah, it's like creating your own little cultural melting pot.
Exactly.
But it's not just about fun times, right?
No.
There's like a deeper meaning to it.
Right. It's about really understanding each other, respecting each other, and feeling like you belong.
Yeah.
By sharing those experiences, you're finding that common ground where you both feel appreciated. And that makes the bond stronger.
And that shared strength is so important because then we come to family dynamics, which is where things can get a little trickier.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
Now, you're not just figuring out your own cultural differences, but you've got families and their expectations and perceptions and all that.
Yeah, the article acknowledges that family acceptance really depends on a lot of things. Cultural backgrounds, personal beliefs, generational differences.
Yeah.
Some families are totally open and welcoming to interracial relationships.
Yeah.
But others might be dealing with prejudices or cultural norms that are like totally opposed to it.
So you've got this extra challenge where you're trying to build a life together, honor your cultures, and also navigate all these family dynamics.
Yeah.
That sounds really tough. What does the article say about couples who face pushback from their families?
Well, the first thing is communication. It's important to have honest and respectful conversations with family members.
Yeah.
Try to educate them about your relationship and what it means to you.
Okay.
Sometimes it means sharing personal stories.
Right.
Explaining why this relationship is important to you. And challenging their outdated beliefs.
Yeah.
With patience and understanding.
So it's about meeting them where they are.
Right.
But also standing up for your relationship.
Yeah.
What about those situations where families are just not receptive at all?
Yeah, the article acknowledges that unfortunately, some families won't come around. In those cases, it's important to build a support system outside of your immediate family.
Okay.
Yeah. Lean on friends, maybe seek guidance from a therapist, or connect with other interracial couples who get it.
It's about creating that chosen family.
Right.
To give you that love and support when you need it.
Exactly.
Okay, and then there's the bigger picture of societal challenges that interracial couples face.
Yes.
The article doesn't sugarcoat that either, does it?
No, it acknowledges that prejudice and discrimination are still out there.
Yeah.
Talks about, overt hostility, verbal harassment,
right,
even physical violence that some couples experience.
That's awful, but it's real.
Yeah, it's real.
And it's not always that obvious, right?
Right.
There are those subtle forms of prejudice, too.
Yeah, those microaggressions.
What are those again?
You know, those little everyday slights or insults or things that invalidate you?
Yeah.
They might be backhanded compliments,
right.
assumptions about your background, or constantly questioning your relationship.
It's the kind of thing that can really wear a person down.
It can.
And the article talks about resilience and finding strength in each other.
Yeah.
How do couples do that?
Again, it comes down to communication. Creating a safe space where you can talk about your experiences.
Okay.
Process those feelings.
Yeah.
And support each other.
It's like having a partner in the trenches who really gets it.
Exactly.
And that's so important.
Exactly.
Not just for you, but for the relationship as a whole.
Right.
The article then goes on to talk about intentionally creating a shared identity. I love that phrase, intentional creation. It suggests that couples have the power to shape their relationship and create something meaningful.
Yeah.
How do they do that?
Okay, so it talks about bonding experiences, like attending those cultural events together, immersing yourselves in each other's traditions, maybe even creating your own traditions as a couple that blend elements of both cultures.
It's like building a bridge between two worlds.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Creating this space where both cultures can be present and enrich each other.
Exactly.
But it's not just about outward stuff like rituals or celebrations, is it?
No.
There's an inner process, too, of merging those identities.
It's about understanding each other's values and beliefs, finding common ground, and learning from each other.
That creates a sense of belonging.
Yeah. You're not trying to fit into just one culture.
Right.
You're creating a space where you both feel seen and accepted for who you are.
And that strengthens the relationship?
It does.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's talk about interracial parenting.
Okay.
Which adds another layer to all of this.
It does, right? It's complex, but also incredibly rewarding. You're navigating your own identities, but also shaping the identities of your children.
It brings up a whole new set of questions.
Yeah.
How do you give kids from mixed backgrounds that sense of belonging and cultural pride? How do you handle potential conflicts or confusion about their identity?
Right. Those are all important questions.
Yeah.
And the article offers some good advice.
Like what?
It says, it's really important to nurture cultural pride in your children.
Okay.
Expose them to both cultures.
Yeah.
Celebrate their mixed heritage and create a home where they feel comfortable exploring who they are.
So you're not picking one culture over the other. You're making space for all parts of their heritage. It's like giving them a cultural buffet. Right.
Yeah.
To try all the flavors.
Yeah.
But it's not just about exposure.
Right.
It's about helping them understand race and identity in a world that can be confusing and even hostile.
Yeah, you're giving them the tools to navigate a world that might not always accept them for who they are.
And that brings us to celebrating the beauty and resilience of interracial love.
Yeah.
It's not just about overcoming obstacles.
No.
It's about the strength and beauty and power that come from those experiences.
Exactly.
The article really highlights those positive aspects.
It does.
It talks about how these relationships challenge the status quo, spark conversations about race and identity, and contribute to a more inclusive world.
Yeah, it's like they're pioneers.
I love that.
Blazing trails for a future where love doesn't see boundaries.
That's so powerful.
Yeah.
And that wraps up part one of our deep dive into what nobody tells you about interracial love.
Yeah.
We've covered a lot.
We have.
From debunking those stereotypes to the complexities of communication, family dynamics, and the challenges society throws at us.
Yeah.
But we've also seen how these relationships can be a source of strength, resilience, and positive change.
Yeah, we've just scratched the surface.
I know, right?
Yeah.
There's so much more to uncover. In part two, we're going to keep exploring the article, going deeper into the nuances of interracial love and looking at the impact these relationships have on people and on society as a whole.
I'm excited.
Me too. So stay tuned.
Okay. Welcome back to our deep dive into interracial love.
So good to be back. Last time we really got into the nitty-gritty of interracial relationships, the challenges, the communication strategies, the family dynamics. All that good stuff.
Yeah, and we started to talk about the strength and the beauty of these relationships.
Exactly. And this time I'm really excited to explore how interracial love can actually lead to positive changes, both for individuals and for society as a whole.
Yeah, that's something the article really emphasizes. It doesn't just celebrate these relationships.
Right.
It also looks at how they can be a force for broader social transformation.
Wow. Okay, I'm all ears. Where do we start?
Well, one of the first things the article points out is that interracial relationships challenge those societal norms.
Right, because they just, by existing, they disrupt those traditional ideas about, race and love and belonging.
Exactly. And that disruption can be a really powerful catalyst for change. When people see interracial couples living happy and fulfilling lives, it challenges those deep-seated prejudices and assumptions that people often don't even question.
It's like they're saying, hey, love doesn't fit into these neat little boxes you've made.
Right.
It's messy and complicated, and it can happen anywhere.
Exactly. And that challenge to the status quo can spark important conversations about race, culture, identity.
Yeah.
Conversations that might not happen otherwise.
Right, because it forces people to confront their own biases, to really examine those beliefs they might not even realize they have.
Yeah, it creates opportunities for dialogue, for understanding different perspectives, and breaking down those barriers that keep us apart.
And that leads to another point the article makes about how interracial love can build bridges between cultures.
Right. These relationships can act as bridges, connecting communities that might otherwise stay isolated or even be hostile towards each other.
Yeah, it's like it creates these points of intersection where cultures can meet and interact and learn from one another.
Precisely. And through those interactions, stereotypes get challenged.
Yeah.
We discover commonalities, and we start to see each other's shared humanity.
It's like realizing that even with our differences in culture or language or background, we all want the same things.
Right. We all want love and connection and belonging.
Right. And that's a powerful message.
It is.
Especially in a world that often focuses on what divides us.
Yeah.
The article also talks about how interracial love can help create a more inclusive and equitable society, which makes sense based on what we've been talking about.
Right. By challenging norms, starting dialogues, building bridges, these relationships help to dismantle prejudice and create a space for greater acceptance.
So it's about chipping away at those systemic barriers that lead to discrimination and inequality.
Exactly. And it's not just about taking away the negative. It's also about building something positive.
What do you mean?
The article talks about how interracial relationships can inspire others to embrace diversity and create a society that's more vibrant and inclusive.
That really resonates with me. It's not just about tolerating differences. It's about celebrating them and recognizing that our differences make us stronger.
Yeah, a society where everyone feels valued and respected. That's a society that can really thrive.
Now, as we're talking about these societal impacts, I want to bring it back to the personal level. How do those personal journeys within interracial relationships connect to these bigger societal changes?
That's a good question. The article suggests that navigating an interracial relationship can lead to a lot of personal growth and self-discovery.
Yeah, I can see that. You're always confronting your own biases, expanding your worldview.
Learning to see things from different cultural perspectives.
Exactly. It's a journey of self-reflection.
Right.
Challenging your assumptions.
Awesome.
And gaining a deeper understanding of yourself and the world.
And that personal growth then has a ripple effect. As individuals become more aware and accepting, those changes spread to their families, their communities, and ultimately to society as a whole.
Like ripples in a pond.
Exactly.
Spreading outward from that initial point of impact.
Yeah, and it highlights how personal relationships can have a big impact on the world.
Okay, so we've talked about how interracial relationships challenge norms, build bridges, promote inclusion. We've talked about personal growth and self-discovery. And we've celebrated the beauty and resilience of these relationships, acknowledging the challenges, but also focusing on the positive impact.
And I think we've covered a lot.
It's been a really insightful conversation.
It has.
I feel like I have a much deeper understanding of this topic now.
Me too. But there's one more thing the article talks about.
Oh, what's that?
It talks about the importance of allyship in supporting interracial couples and promoting racial justice.
Yeah, it's not enough to just admire these relationships from afar. We have to actively support them and work to create a world where they can truly flourish.
Absolutely, and the article gives some concrete suggestions for how to do that.
Okay, I'm really interested to hear about those. What can people actually do to be better allies?
Well, one of those important things is to educate ourselves about racism and discrimination. learn about the history,
Right.
the ongoing realities.
Yeah. We can't address a problem we don't understand.
Exactly. So read books, watch documentaries, listen to podcasts, have conversations with people from different backgrounds.
It's about taking responsibility for our own learning.
Right.
And not expecting people of color to do all the work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And once we have that knowledge, we could start to challenge our own biases and the biases of the people around us.
So it's not just about thinking about our own beliefs.
Right.
It's about speaking up when we see injustice happening.
Yeah.
Calling out racist jokes or comments and using our voices to advocate for change.
Exactly. And that advocacy can take a lot of different forms.
Like what?
You could support organizations that are fighting for racial justice. Donate to causes that combat discrimination.
Yeah.
Or even just have those tough conversations with family and friends who might have prejudiced views.
It's about taking action, big or small, to make the world a more just and equitable place.
Right. And remembering that it's a lifelong process of learning and growing and challenging ourselves to be better.
Okay, so we've got educating ourselves, speaking up. What else can we do to support interracial couples?
The article also talks about amplifying their voices.
What does that look like?
Sharing their stories, promoting their work, creating platforms for them to share their perspectives.
Yeah, using our own platforms to give them a wider reach.
Exactly. And it's not just about amplifying their voices. It's also about listening to them.
What do you mean?
We need to make sure we're not speaking for them.
Right.
Or assuming we know what their experiences are like.
So it's about humility. Recognizing that they are the experts on their own lives.
Absolutely. Listen to their stories, learn from their experiences, and let them guide us on how we can best support them.
Okay, so educate ourselves.
Yeah.
Speak up.
Amplify their voices.
Right. And listen.
Okay, anything else?
The article also encourages us to support organizations that are fighting for racial justice and working to dismantle systemic discrimination.
So putting our money where our mouth is and supporting the groups that are on the front lines.
Exactly. You can donate to a legal defense fund, volunteer your time, or just spread awareness about their work.
Every little bit counts.
It does.
And for parents and educators out there, the article has some advice for raising kids to be more accepting and inclusive.
It talks about starting those conversations about race and diversity early on. Creating a home or a classroom environment where kids feel comfortable asking questions and exploring these topics.
And exposing them to different perspectives through books, movies, music, art.
Yeah, it's about showing them that the world is a beautiful tapestry.
I love that.
Made up of many different threads, each one unique and valuable.
And on that note, I think we've covered a lot today.
We have.
We've explored the challenges and the joys of interracial love. We've talked about what it means to be an ally. And we've shared some concrete actions that people can take to create a more just and inclusive world.
It's been a really inspiring conversation.
It has. And as we wrap up this second part of our deep dive, I'm feeling hopeful. There are definitely still obstacles out there.
Of course.
But at least the conversation is happening and people are starting to understand the power of embracing diversity.
I agree. I'm optimistic too. I think that with open hearts and open minds and a commitment to taking action, we can create a world where love truly doesn't see color or culture.
That's beautifully said. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of interracial love. We hope you've learned something new, challenged your assumptions, and felt inspired to be a part of the change.
Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep loving. Welcome back, everyone. We're wrapping up our deep dive on interracial love.
It's been a journey.
It has. We've explored so much. The dynamics, the challenges, the ways these relationships can spark real change.
Absolutely.
So in this last part, I want to focus on what we can actually do.
Okay.
How do we take all this knowledge and use it to be better allies?
Yeah, that's a great point. Knowledge without action, it doesn't really do much.
Exactly. So for our listeners who are ready to step up, what are some concrete things they can do?
The article really stresses that allyship starts with ourselves.
Okay.
We need to look at our own biases, even the ones we might not realize we have.
That can be tough, though, right?
It can be. It's like holding up a mirror and being honest about what you see.
But it's so important.
It is. We all have biases from how we were raised.
Yeah.
The media.
Our experiences, acknowledging those biases is the first step to changing them.
Okay, so how can someone start examining their own biases?
There's some great resources online.
Oh, like what?
Implicit bias tests. Those can help you see those hidden prejudices.
Okay.
And there are tons of books, articles, podcasts that explore this in depth.
So actively looking for information and trying to see things from different perspectives?
Yeah, exactly.
And it's a constant process, right?
It is. It's not a one-time fix.
Right.
It's about always questioning your assumptions and being open to learning.
Beyond that internal work, what are some things people can do in their everyday lives to be better allies?
One of the most powerful things is to speak up.
Okay.
When you see prejudice or discrimination.
Even when it's uncomfortable.
Especially when it's uncomfortable. Silence can be seen as agreement. It's about using your voice to challenge those racist jokes or stereotypes or microaggressions.
But those conversations can be hard.
Yeah, they can.
Especially with family or friends who might not see things the same way.
I hear you. It's tough.
Any tips for navigating those?
Approach those conversations with empathy and respect.
Okay.
But also stand firm in your beliefs.
So it's not about attacking people.
No.
It's about opening their minds.
Exactly. Share your experiences. Listen to their concerns.
Right.
Try to find common ground.
Sometimes just planting that seed of doubt can be enough.
It can. And, if it gets too heated, it's okay to step away.
Right.
You don't have to fight every battle.
Self-care is important, too.
It is.
Okay, so speak up when you see something wrong. What else can we do to support interracial couples?
Amplify their voices.
What do you mean by that?
Share their stories. Promote their work.
Yeah.
Give them platforms to share their perspectives.
So using our platform to help them reach a wider audience.
Exactly. And don't forget listening.
What do you mean by listening?
We need to make sure we're not speaking for interracial couples.
Oh, okay.
Or assuming we know their experiences.
So recognizing that they're the experts on their own lives.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Listen to their stories. Learn from them.
Yeah.
And let them guide us.
Okay, so self-reflection.
Yeah.
Speaking up, amplifying voices.
Right.
And listening.
Got it. Anything else?
Yeah. Support organizations that are fighting for racial justice.
Okay.
And working to dismantle systemic discrimination.
Putting our money where our mouth is.
Exactly.
Supporting those groups that are doing the hard work.
Yeah. You can donate. Volunteer.
Right.
Or just spread the word about what they're doing.
Okay. So that's something everyone can do. Now for parents and educators.
Yeah.
What does the article say about raising kids to be more inclusive?
It says to start talking about race and diversity early. Create a space where kids feel safe to ask questions and learn about these complex issues.
And expose them to different perspectives, right? Through books, movies, music, art.
Showing them that the world is made up of all these different beautiful threads.
Exactly. Each one unique and valuable.
Well said. And I think that's a perfect way to end our deep dive.
It is. We've talked about so much.
The challenges and the joys of interracial love. The importance of being an ally.
Yeah.
And the steps we can all take to build a more just and inclusive world.
It's been an incredible conversation.
It really has. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us. We hope you've learned something new, questioned your own assumptions, and felt inspired to be a part of creating a world where love truly knows no bounds.
A world where everyone feels seen and celebrated.
Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep loving.